Hello, everybody. So yesterday I got the material design, the lights to load and to get put into the scene, and then the material design to lay out, and material design table to lay out. And today I added this button so that you can show the edit forms or hide the edit forms, and basically works like that. And then additionally, there's basic inputs. I didn't think we needed the. It didn't make any sense to use the fancy inputs because, you it should be pretty obvious you're updating X position, Y position, Z position, and you don't really have very much space in here. And then intensity really needs to be more of a draggable thing, so I didn't make that where you could update it here. But then the idea is that you can come in here, you can click that and open a detail, and then you'll basically have a big fancy form in here that you'll be able to change additional things. So the idea is that, basic things that you can update here, and then additional things you would update, like colors and things like that, you would update in the expandable detail. So what we are 120 in, let me hit play. So let me get into the code. Okay, so that was all inspired off of this in Angular material. They have this example where you can open and close um, a detail area. Uh, this everywhere I work, they love this. Everyone loves this, and everywhere I've worked, um, it's always a struggle to get this expand contract working. And so whenever I build one of these out, I get off the beaten path a little bit to make that happen. So anyways, so let me go to the code and show what we're doing over here. Let me go back to here and then expand that. All right. So in the HTML, so most of the work is in the HTML. Probably makes sense actually to, well, let me just do this first piece up here. So I added a new button, and basically it calls something called toggle edit, and then there's some logic that says if we're in edit mode, then show the text raw data, otherwise show the text edit forms. Let me see if I can just alt tab over there. So basically you can click this and that text changes in there, and that's what controls that. Um, and then within the way that's being handled within the actual cells is each cell, if it's in edit mode, will show a text box. If it's not in edit mode, it just shows the regular text. It interpolates the text. And then this will get tied into some reactive forms, probably in the next video. And then, yeah, so that's what happens. And then there's this expand. So basically, this column here that we hide when we're in raw mode, but we show when we're in edit mode. So, um, and that is handled um, up here. So we say if edit, show the button, otherwise show a non-breaking space. So that's about that. That's pretty simple. That's the easy part. Now the table itself. So let's go into the styles real quick. Um, so basically, the buttons were kind of jammed up on each other. So I added a little bit of horizontal spacing. The inputs default are a bit too wide, so I set them to 50. And now, so this is sort of the magic behind the expandable rows. You set the height of the row to 0 um, by default. So like if you were to come in here and you look at let me close that, and you inspect this, drag this inspector down into the view, and you look at the rows, see there's a row and it has a height of 0. And that is a row that is sitting in between there. So it's just sitting hidden. Um, and that's how they achieve that. Um, Basically, by default, all the rows are there. All the detail rows are there. You just can't see them because they only have a height of 1. Um, so so that's how that works. So then light detail, the overflow is hidden, display is flex, and that's more That's to keep the detail from showing. And then I also added this on my own. If it's collapsed, then the display is none. I don't know exactly how it works in the example, the Angular material example, but it just wouldn't work for me. Um, Even though the height was set to 0, you could still see the row. And until I took the data itself, and when we go over the HTML, you'll see. Until I took that, it was not working. So over here in the TypeScript, there really wasn't a whole lot. I had to pull in the input modules and the form field modules, and actually I don't even need those at this point. I will need them though when we do the detail, when I do the detail, but for now, I tried to do the detail, the mat form fields inside of the material, and it just didn't make sense because you end up with labels, and it has a label. It's very redundant. It's weird. Um, so I added a new display column called expand. And that is required for that to work. And then and basically that's why that other column gets showed up. That's why that shows up. And even if we're in raw mode, it's still there. You just can't see it. I mean, it just doesn't have. It just is non-breaking space. Um, and then the flag, the toggle true false flag, and I set it. It's going to default to false, but I set it to true just for um, convenience while I'm coding. And then the expanded ID is 0 because I don't have any zeros. Now, in the actual examples, they use an expanded object, not just the ID. Everywhere I work, especially if you get like junior developers, and they've just kind of copied directly from the material example, they're under some conditions their toggle just doesn't work, and it's because it's trying to compare the objects, and if the objects don't change, it won't. It can't tell that they're not the same. Anyways, it gets very complicated. This is a nice primitive that we can compare to, and you'll see that we I'll show you that when we get into the template. And this toggle edit is just a standard toggle. It just switches the edit from true to the false. So if you click the button, it just goes to the opposite of whatever it was before. Now for the hard part, the actual markup. So in the markup, there was a lot of changes. So you can see that. So it makes sense probably just to go into full mode instead of the comparison mode. So let me go up here. So these are our buttons. We already went over those. And I'm just saying if there are light lists, because it does have errors if you try to render the table before the light list exists. So you'll just see them in the console. Everything still works. You just get some errors in the console, which is, no one likes that. Okay, so this has to be added. I always forget to add this. I always end up making the table, like I kind of have an iterative approach to things, and I make the table first, and then I do all the steps, and this multi-template data rows directive needs to be added or it won't work. Okay, so ID was already there, and there's nothing special on that one because ID is not editable. And then over here's the case, the control flow that I was talking about before, where it just checks to see if it's edited and shows that. So I'm just going to slide by those things. Intensity doesn't do anything. And then, so here is, we don't really do anything in here. Okay, so we add this here. Let me go back to this view. So once we get here, I think it's valuable to. Okay, so this is all new, right? This whole new expand column is brand new, and basically it is the column the new column that we show. And basically, if we're in edit mode, we show these buttons. Otherwise, we show a non-breaking space, which I mentioned before. And then these buttons are the mat icons that go up and down. And then within the actual template, we do this logic. This expanded light is equal to expanded light ID, there's a ternary here. So this ternary basically says that if the expanded light ID that we saved is equal to the light.id, then uh, return null. Otherwise, return the light ID. So basically, don't. So like if that's the toggle. So it's a toggle. It goes back and forth. It goes if it already exists, then you reset it. If it doesn't exist, you if it's a null, then you set it back. Um, and this all operates in the TypeScript, um, and that's a very standard way of doing things. I used to really hate ternaries, but now I like them. I'm going to stop that. Um, I like them inside of templates, and that's the only place I really like them. Um, I feel like they're very difficult to maintain in regular code, but I feel like the advantages in template of it being so curt is really helpful inside of templates. So I do like it on that. If you look at the actual, like if you emulate the example, they do something more like expanded light is equal to expanded light is equal to light ID. And this comparison is not always, there are conditions where that comparison just doesn't work as you would imagine. So that's why I always go with the primitive ID instead. But now it said, but depending on whether the expanded light, if the current expanded light ID is the current lights ID that's of the row, then we show different icons. And then yeah, that makes, I think that makes sense. And then this is the actual detail column, right? So I mean the detail. So this is, let me go back over here. This is this area, the whole form. So basically this row is what's in there. And now let me go back. So the row is basically all it has is this form text. This is where the whole form will go. But we have this, so we name it. We tell it the name of this thing is expanded detail, and this has to align with the, when we come in here, expanded, it has to align with this column. Well, maybe not. So anyways, let me hit back. This, I am not super, like I always just have to get this working, unfortunately. I really wish I understood this better. But anyways, oh yeah, that's right. This expanded detail is this right here. So this is telling it that there's a column expanded detail, and that it's tied to this column definition of expanded detail. And it actually surprises me that, and this just shows like how I thought I really understood this, but I don't understand it as well as it. I thought that also had to align with the column name. And actually I want to go check that right now. So do things break if I change this to expanded detail? Let's look at so the compiler is happy. Let's see. Add light. No, it broke. So it did not like that. Not sure why. But it says cannot read property of undefined in there. So let's go ahead and change that back. And everybody will be happy again. Back to here. Scroll back down to expanded detail. I guarantee that the next time I need to do this, I will be looking at this video on YouTube from wherever I'm working, because this is always a struggle. I've definitely spent a lot more time on this than I had wanted to, but but it's so worth it. I mean, it's just such an elegant and beautiful implementation that the Angular material people came up with. It's just it's just complicated and difficult to actually implement. But once it's implemented, it's pretty easy to maintain. But anyway, so this column diff, and then so we set this class to light detail, and then we have this ng class property, and it is set to actually it's a directive, and this says basically set this to collapse if the light ID is not equal to the expanded light ID. So that basically says don't show it. So if we look over at the CSS, you'll see, yeah, because there's not much more left. So let's go back here. The CSS collapse says display none. So basically don't display anything in there. If hide whatever's in there if it is not expanded, if the row is not expanded. So and then all that's left is to add this extra row here at the bottom that says mat row def, and then it's expanded. It tells it that that's expanded detail and detail row, and that's about it. It's just like I said, very difficult to implement in general, and it's very easy to maintain once if you get it implemented and it works really well to begin with. Then you really very rarely ever have to do anything with it again unless something changes, like during an upgrade or something. But it's really cool and useful. Everyone loves it. I've seen places where like you they have maps in here and bar graphs and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like you could put anything in there. So like you could have like a list of locations or something, and then like then you open this up and then you have like a whole dashboard information about that location. It's a pretty cool widget. Anyways, happy coding. Bye.